The impact we make on life is determined by our responses to the events that affect us. Do we crumble? Do we rise up? Do we determine to change the way of the world to improve the lives of others? That brings us to our guest today, who as a teenage girl experienced the slow deterioration of her grandfather's life due to failing kidneys. Sadly, his life was cut shorter than it needed to be, robbing Hailey, her family, and all of us of the incredible contributions he still wanted to make. In response, Hailey was determined to change the lives of thousands of people affected with kidney disease. She became an organ transplantation crusader. She started by talking to anyone who would listen. Now she's leading the charge to introduce the issue of organ transplantation into the high school curriculum. She says it's important that we all appreciate the gift of organ transplantation, along with the legal obligations required to ensure your wishes are fulfilled. For example, did you know that your family can deny the donation of your organs upon your death, even though you've completed an organ donation card? We invited Hailey Cheema to join us for a conversation that matters about the myriad details associated with organ transplantation.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
You're happy, healthy, like everything's working with you, and it seems like an odd sort of place to start with a conversation. But I bring it up because we're talking about becoming a registered organ donor. And when I look at you, I think, well, why? Like, why is organ donation so important to you?
I think it's really important to me, and it plays a really big part of who I am because I've been really invested in kidney disease for a long time. And it stems from a personal background of my grandfather actually passing away from the disease in 2009. And
now, and is that because he was unable to get a donated organ that would help him survive?
yeah, so actually he found out that his kidneys were damaged past the point of being able to get a transplant because of his age. And so that acted as a barrier for him to even be on the transplant waiting list. So as soon as he was diagnosed with the disease, he was on dialysis until he had passed away.
How old was he when he was diagnosed?
I believe he was in his mid-70s when he got diagnosed. And ironically, it was because of being undiagnosed with high blood pressure that had led to the significant damage of his kidneys.
So, okay. So, had he been diagnosed properly with being able to check and maintain his blood pressure, the prognosis or the outcome might have been different.
Exactly. So the significant damage that his high blood pressure, being unmedicated for so long, had on his kidneys led him to not only be at an age where he wouldn't be eligible for a transplant, but also the damage had been so significant that he was only on dialysis for a couple of years before he passed away.
So what was it about your grandfather's condition that made you say, well, hang on a second, like I can understand you saying, hang on, let's go back and address what's going on in the medical system. Why did he go undiagnosed? But you went to a place of saying, well, how can we collectively ensure that we can help one another if we're in that place to be able to donate a kidney?
Yeah, so I think it was really important for me that I didn't realize at such a young age, I was only about 12 years old when he passed away, that you're not just old when you get kidney disease and need a transplant. You can be as young as when you're born, as young as 2 to 5 years old, and ironically as young as me when I was 13 and 14, and it was understanding about the importance of kidney disease and organ donation, that it doesn't matter about your age. You could need a transplant as young as me. And I think that was really pivotal for me, that I was young, I had this experience, and in my eyes, an honor to remember my grandfather. And I wanted to be able to help people and use my platform to be able to spread awareness on this disease that's not very talked about in society.
Hardly at all.
Exactly. And for me, it was the high blood pressure and diabetes that affect a lot of people, not only in this province, but across the country. And it's just providing that knowledge that if these things go untreated, they can lead to kidney disease, and they can end up leading you to need a transplant.
So you start looking into this. What did you find out about kidney transplantation rates and the number of people who say, yeah, okay, should something unfortunate happen to me, you can harvest my kidneys and give them to somebody else.
Yeah, so I didn't realize how many people really were waiting for a transplant. So there's about 700 people in BC alone waiting for a transplant. And approximately about 100 people every single year pass away on that transplant list just because there's no organ available for them. So it became evident to me that the organ supply outpaced the demand. And that to me was really interesting because we don't talk about it. And I had never, I mean, around me and around my community and my generation, not only youth, but just in my local community when I was growing up in high school,
Right.
no one had really talked about these things with me.
So I got to get you to hang on for a second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
I don't know anybody who actually talks about it much, other than, of course, we had Kathy McLaughlin in, who she was lucky enough not only to get one kidney, which failed while she was still in the hospital, and through a miracle, a second kidney was found in time for her to have a second transplant within days of the first one. And today, she's still, a very strong contributor on so many fronts, like her family, her job, the people that she employs, the people she helps. I mean, it matters because people live, and when they live, they make a difference.
Exactly, and I think that was really important for me because when I was young, I would see my grandfather hooked up to a machine 3 days a week in a very vigorous treatment of dialysis, and see him come home and be weak and be sick. And unfortunately, he actually spent his last few minutes on this earth at dialysis. He took his last breath on the bed. And I think that was really important for me to then start volunteering as a renal ambassador in the hospitals and start seeing people that weren't just in their 70s and 80s, they were in their 20s, they were in their teens, and they were hooked up to a dialysis machine, and they had to do the exact same thing that I had to do, go to school, have their sports, have their social life, but they had about 4 hours every 3 days that they had to be hooked up to a machine in the hospital.
Wow. And so you said, I want to help them. I want to ensure that they can be recipients and that there are donors. So how'd that get started, and what did you start doing to now start to encourage people to say, make sure that you're a donor?
So I think it's really important for me that we have conversation, and I think that's the first point that mattered to me was when I was about 5 years old, we had open conversation about Terry Fox and his heroism and the fact that he had this disease, he had cancer, and it unfortunately took his life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a sensitivity that's still around organ donation and the concept of it as a whole. And I think it's the fact that there is a lack of informed conversation within our community and within our society to talk about being a donor, what that means, and the significance of what it can be, not only for someone's life, but their entire life outcome. And I think it's important to know that the longer that you are on a treatment such as dialysis, the longer that you have to wait for a transplant, the worse your outcomes are when you get a transplant. So it really is time of the essence. And
Right.
on average, you could wait from 5 to 8 years across Canada, depending on your province, just to get a kidney.
Wow. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit earlier there are sensitivities around the topic. What are those sensitivities?
I think it's the sensitivity of talking about death. And I think it's the fact that when your family member passes away, and if there isn't a conversation within your household about organ donation, and because of our province's opt-in system, that if you pass away and you haven't had this conversation openly with your family members can revoke your decision even if you've been registered.
What? So you can register to be a donor, but your family can revoke that
Yes.
wish that you have already stated?
Yes, exactly. And
How does that work?
So that's with regard to an opt-in system. So that is why there's a lot of push from the community about a presumed consent system, which is an opt-out system.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone is a registered donor unless you've opted out. And that is something that I've had the privilege of understanding more about through the Kidney Foundation, through BC Transplant over the years. But I think what one thing is missing about that is that in order to get to a presumed consent system, in order to have any of our political to have it on the political agenda, is that we need to have informed conversations in our community about organ donation and the importance of it in order to get the community to be in favor of a system such as presumed consent.
So you talk about the fact that people don't want to address the concept that I may die. I don't want to discuss this. How do you get beyond that? How do you get people now to start to open up to you? Because they must go, excuse me, you want me to talk about what? I don't think so. How do you push beyond that? And what's your success rate in doing so?
Yeah, and so right now I think the importance with me was looking at the youth. And I think that's the first place that I wanted to start, was kind of empowering people just like me when I was about 15 years old and I started getting vetted into this idea of organ donation and kidney disease. And that's kind of why last year in April I started a change.org petition to actually start getting the attention of our community members, our community stakeholders, and say, why aren't we learning about this in our schools? Why aren't we learning about this at the age of 16 and as of 2017, in every single ICBC and BC Service Center, there's actually organ donor registration cards that were implemented. And when you're taking that step at 16 to be responsible on the road, not only for yourself, but for the sake of everybody else on the road,
right?
Why aren't we learning about organ donation when we're first seeing it? Why aren't we understanding in our schools what this means, what the importance of it is? So when we do have that conversation at 16 and get our licenses, we are able to understand what that registration card means and bring that home and have those conversations with our family and with our friends.
Right, and it is important to have that, because as you pointed out, aside from being a minor, family members, if you haven't had that conversation, can revoke that wish. So how important is it if you are under the age of adult consent, even though you have said, yes, I want to be an organ donor, that it's explicitly clear to your parents that you would like to have your organs go to the benefit of somebody else who may be in need of them?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you do have those conversations with your family members, because like you said, after you pass away, if those conversations haven't been had, then it's up to the discretion of your family members to allow you to donate or not allow you to donate. And I think, especially if someone's very young, those organs are very valuable to a lot of people. And I think it's even more hard for the family to have those conversations with the hospital and the transplant advocacy members to donate those organs. And I think if they are prefaced on your wishes and on the importance of what it means to you to donate, I think that makes a really big, profound change in their willingness to let you donate after you're not here anymore.
This is our second break. We'll be back in a moment.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
There is a form that I know of, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's available from the Ministry of Health, as I understand, online, and it is designed to allow you to give very specific instructions about what you would like to have happen with regards to the way that you get treated. Should you be needing heroic measures to keep you alive, should your life should be sustained, and so on. Would that be the appropriate place also to spell out specifically what your wishes are, even if you are under the age of majority?
I believe that it is, and I believe it's the same thing in terms of being treated with, I'm assuming it's do not resuscitate.
That's right. Yeah.
I believe that it's the exact same type of topic as that organ donation, being able to harvest those organs, and there is a critical shelf life for each organ that varies, and unfortunately BC does not compare into to provinces such as Toronto, who have better equipment that can actually prolong the shelf life of these organs. So we are working with a more critical time frame with being able to harvest those and then find a donor and get the donor to come in, the recipient, to come in and to receive the transplant. So I do think it's important to have some type of acknowledgement on behalf of the individual that they do wish to donate, and that is taken into consideration when they do view things such as do not resuscitate.
Now, we're talking about somebody who passes away.
Yes.
What prompted you getting in touch with me, of course, is you saw the conversation that we recorded with Dr. Corey Nislow, who, on his own, decided to donate one of his kidneys while he's still alive. And he said that that is a remarkably challenging thing to do. Do you advocate that people should consider this?
I do. I do think that living donation is a really, really important concept to talk about. And I think it's really important that we at least spread awareness and understanding of not only the benefits but the risks, and have those in the community understand everything that goes within the realm of living donation. Of course, you would assume that living donation and living organs are way more valuable than deceased donation, and it also acts as a preventative measure for those individuals to in the future have to receive a transplant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is important to have those conversations about living donation, but I think for me, the really big importance is having informed conversations and changing the narrative around organ donation, and really curbing the statistic that surrounds us not having enough organs within the province.
Okay, so somebody is watching this program and they go, okay, Hailey, that's a really nice idea, but how do I bring it up with my parents, who every time that I've tried to breach this topic goes, we're not having this conversation, and even if we do, you don't get my consent.
Honestly,
What are the arguments that you would use to say, no, you got to keep going, and here are some facts and figures that you can employ to help convince your family members that this is the right thing for you to do?
yeah, I think with me, with opening the conversation, at least within my home, it is important to help them understand that it's not just affecting people who are elderly, who may have at some point abused their body or abused their organs. And some of these conditions that lead to kidney disease and then further lead to needing a transplant means that you've been born with them and they're completely out of your control. And to me, that goes aligned with diseases such as cancer that affect a large part of the population. And I think it's important that if I was trying to convince my family that I want to be a donor, it's that it completely takes away your entire youth, your entire livelihood, just to have to go through treatments such as dialysis. And I think that it's important for them to understand how much of your life and how much of your years get taken back and get taken away, and how many moments get taken away, such as going to college, having a normal youth. And I think that's important for me to convey things like that and say that it completely rids a lot of experiences from your life. Having to go through dialysis, having to go through those rigorous treatments, going through IV, going to BC Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I think it's completely overshadowed. And I think things such as dialysis, they're not really understood. And I think that would be really important for me to have to bring up with my family, is that there's not enough knowledge base on it. And I think that's why those conversations in the household are hard, is because we don't have an informed conversation about them. And there is this narrative that's very limited around organ donation. And I think it's the importance of the youth bringing those conversations and at least initiating them with their family that will start the conversation, and hopefully in the future and in coming years change the narrative around this topic.
Third and final break. We'll be right back.
Conversations That Matter is a not-for-profit program made possible thanks to the charitable support of the following and from viewers like you. Please visit conversationsthatmatter.tv and help us to continue to produce this program.
So, it starts with you and your grandfather. You become interested, you get involved. What are you doing now? Because you have a whole initiative underway. Where's it at, and how do people get in touch with you, or to also get behind what you're doing?
Yeah, so last year in about April, I actually started a change.org petition to implement organ donation into the BC academic curriculum.
Change.org, is that the website?
Yes,
Okay.
change.org. So it's for BC organ donation into the curriculum within the schools. And I think that it was important for me to at least start the ball rolling. I started to get a little bit of attention after about a couple of weeks. I had about 1,000 signatures.
After a couple of weeks?
After a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so after that, I actually started partnering up with a city councillor in the city of Surrey. And we are actually working towards a meeting in actually the coming weeks to start the conversation with the school board to potentially launch a pilot program in the cities of Surrey School District, to implement this education. And the education will actually consist of a video platform that discusses a hero story that is Logan Boulet, who was actually the 21-year-old victim from the Humboldt crash last April that unfortunately passed. But due to his willingness to donate and his family's acceptance of letting him donate, there was actually a spike in over 100,000 organ donor registrations after he had passed away.
Because of the example that he set.
Exactly.
Even in passing, he still was an inspirational figure, person.
Exactly. And I actually saw the province actually saw the greatest increase in youth registrations that it's ever seen. And I think that was very pivotal because it was a fact that there were people listening, and despite the conversations that were not or being held in their home, people were seeing the need for organ donation, the importance and significance, and they were registering to donate.
Wow. So you're encouraged. So have you heard back from the Surrey School Board yet?
Yeah, so we actually have a meeting set up in the next week and a half to speak with them and actually present my organ donation registration organ donation education platform.
So how would it play itself out within the school? How are you going to be able to share that message within the school?
Yeah, so there's actually publicly available education that's from the UK that actually has consent forms that can go home with the parents to let them know that these conversations will be being held in the schools. It will surround planning, career life planning 10. That's in for the grade 10/16-year-old demographic.
So that means that you're looking at having that added to the curriculum.
Yes, exactly. So I'm having it actually added as a portion of their course, just a small segment that would probably take one class to educate them. And I think it's important that it's actually in the curriculum and it's not just an assembly presentation, because that way every single grade 10 individual within the system is able to be aware of this education, be aware of this concept. The same as heart and stroke and cancer are also discussed in not only elementary schools, but high schools and middle schools.
Right. So let's say you're successful in Surrey and the results come back and it's good. You see an increase in donation and an increase in those conversations. What help do you need to be able to move this into the curriculum in other school districts around the province? Because you can't do this for free, and you're going to need some support. What kind of support do you need?
Yeah, of course. So I'm actually hoping that as soon as the pilot gets approved, that I will be having a partnership with the Kidney Foundation as well as a couple of nephrologists actually based out of Vancouver. And we will work together to actually come up with a measurement and predictor outcomes to measure the success of the changed attitudes and behaviors towards organ donation, and then also send this to the Ministry of Education as a potential implementation for the Planning 10 curriculum.
Well, the Kidney Foundation and those nephrologists must be ecstatic that you have decided to get behind this, because you're a very persuasive person, and I wish you all the best of luck in helping us understand, all of us, that we can continue to contribute to the lives of others, even if we're not, walking on this side of the earth. Our impact and our effect can go on. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.